All right, guys, if you guys aren't familiar what the template review is, I am basically going to look at some templates that you guys have submitted on my Discord. I will rank them based on how good I think they are, and if I were to make any adjustments, what adjustments they would actually be. We have a 44 width, that checks out. We have lots of medium tanks. We have a bit of AA in it. I approve of those. He's gone for infantry over mobile infantry because he doesn't care about the speed. That's a legit strategy as well. You can focus more on breakthrough. You can focus more on armor when you're going for slower infantry. Definitely don't have to worry too much about the engines. I support the flame tanks on the offensive. Maintenance is pretty good for capturing as well. Not necessarily always necessary, but it is useful to have. Light tank recon is amazing. Not so useful for this division though, because it's already got lots of armor and breakthrough anyway, so it's kind of redundant here. The soft attack's always nice to have, but once again, it doesn't make a big difference to the division overall. And engineers, once again, I wouldn't be a big fan of engineers for that. It's nice to have, but you don't necessarily have to it. If I was to make this division even better, I would probably take off 3 of these support. The truth is, guys, listen to me here. When you see an empty slot on your support brigade, you don't have to fill it. You don't have to fill it. Every time you add an extra support company, you're lowering the organization on the division. So potentially, you're lowering the combat effectiveness off this division. So sometimes not always, it is sometimes better just to not have those supports added on. I'm just saying. And I will say, engineers can be effective under those circumstances. I know you guys think, oh my god, he hates his engineers. No, engineers can be effective, but just be noteworthy that bloating your support grades is not always the right thing to do. Next time you add a support grade on, check on the differences of the stats of that support company. And a lot of the time, they reduce the organization of the division. Just be aware of that. These big, fat divisions that have like 3 or 4 supply usage, that's a lot of supply. And to balance that out, adding a bit of logistics would also be pretty nice. The org is a little bit on the low end. You want it between 30 and 40, but that's kind of the minimum. If you can get like 40, 41 org, that tends to be like, oh, this is a sweet spot. Once again, not a big critique, just something to be aware of. That way you can get a little bit more effectiveness out of your tank. Next up, we have the AA Motorized with lots of mediums and mechanized with an organization of 33. Once again, a little bit on the low end again, but it still passes. It checks out, okay? We've got a bit of speed, 6.6 kilometers per hour because we've got full-on motorized. Very expensive division though, very expensive because of the mechs. There's also got a tank destroyer here, which I approve of that as well. Adding 1 tank destroyer is really useful because it boosts the overall stats of the division. Most of the time, the piercing on this tank is phenomenal. The armor, on the other hand, 36 for this much armor. That's pretty low. That's a bit strange. I do support the amount of AA you've got here. When you get like over 50 to 100 AA, the AI stops putting up their CAS, and this division basically has almost too much AA. I wouldn't necessarily go over 100 AA versus the AI for that exact reason. Engineers, not so much. Maintenance is okay. Signals are absolutely useless at the moment, unfortunately. Logistics are amazing, and of course, flames are amazing too. We have the 69 division with an amazing 17 organization, but a hefty Girthy 1,122 soft attack. So if this division wins, oh boy, it wins quickly. If it doesn't, it's about to lose about half of its equipment because of the lack of HP and org. This division's awful. It's really awful. Please don't make that. If you want to make this division better, you would need a ratio of 4 infantry battalions for 1 artillery battalion, and you want it below 45 combat width. Those 2 changes would make this division 1,000% better. Next up, we have a 27 combat width, which is a decent combat width size. I like that. We have a very good ratio of artillery to infantry, so the organization is fantastic. 45 org is fantastic. The division cost is very low. We have engineers, which is good for this division because it's defensive. Extra soft attack is always good. Not so much for the singles. AA essential. You do not want to go without AA on this division. And the light tank, which adds a total amount of 5 armor. It's just not worth the armor. I'd get rid of the recon here or make a light tank with more armor. And I'd get rid of the signals. This division is perfect for holding the front lines. Really, really good for holding the front lines. It's slightly more heavy on the soft attack, so it can do some offensive capabilities. If I was to make this division more cost effective, I would probably get rid of maybe a battalion of artillery and shave off some of these support companies just so it's cheaper, so you can have more of them on the front line. If you're going to make a defensive infantry template, you want it well rounded enough so it's cost effective, but also has enough firepower to do its job. Another infantry template for the front line, 26 combat width, that's a really good combat width. The cost of this division is very low. I support this one 100%. Really good for holding the front lines. Engineers for the defensive, soft attack artillery, AA, 10 out of 10. Really good template. I like this. Yep. I support this. If you're going to make this division a little bit better, you add some more soft attack onto it by adding an extra artillery battalion. We have the 28 combat width, medium to motorized, a 1-for-1 ratio, which is usually always a good ratio. The organization is a little bit low. Maybe they might have not gone for mobile warfare to get the org, so that is a little bit on the low end. Logistics on this one is not as required because the division isn't that big. Always nice to have. AA is always useful. Support, I don't know if I support the support. He's got like 400 breakthrough. Does he really need the extra soft attack here? Probably not. And the engineer is really not required here. Divisions that are larger, have higher combat width, gain more from their support companies. Not because they give better stats, just because they're more cost effective. Because remember, the cost for a support company is the same no matter how large the division is. When you overload them, particularly with a small division template, you're making this division unnecessarily expensive. 44 combat width, light tank and mechanized. I've made a division like this before. I did it with France and it was super effective. Now you can modify your light tanks to add lots of armor onto them. You can make these divisions insanely strong. One of the bonuses of light tanks that you're not aware of is they get the least penalties for terrain than any of the tank types. So medium tanks have higher penalties, particularly for the difficult terrain types such as urban or hills. But then heavies and super heavies have even higher penalties for attacking into these difficult terrain locations. But with a light tank, you get the opportunity to attack into more different areas. That's the reason why light tanks are so strong. At the minute, light tank meta is so strong, either for recon or in division. It's so good. I really like this division a lot. And he's gone really heavy on the armor, which I support as well. He's got 1,000 breakthrough. So good, so good. Look at the hardness of this division. This division is so hard. Basically, infantry are not going to be able to do any damage to it unless they have lots of hard attack, which in most cases, no. Support, I support. Logistics is useful. This division is really good. If you were to shave away anything to make this division better, get rid of the artillery. You don't need it. You've got enough breakthrough. When you're going over like 500 breakthrough, you don't need any more extra soft attack on this division, so I don't need the rocket artillery. And you could probably get rid of the maintenance too. It's not essential, but it's always nice to have, I guess. And having more speed gives you the luxury of reaching your objectives a lot quicker than you would normally have done. The biggest issue is if you can't break the front line, the speed's not going to help you because they're not going to move. So all that speed is useless. Hence the reason why I always lean towards armor and breakthrough over speed. Once again, you do you, okay? Whatever tickles your fancy, you do that. This was the tank he went with. This is the light tank. So he's got 84 reliability. Now with this tank, I would try and go for 95 to 100 reliability. Why? Because there's a lot of them in the division. You need to push up the average of the reliability of that division I just showed, and it had like 500 light tanks in it, so it needs to have lots and lots of maintenance. I think sloped armor here is not worth, because sloped armor increases it by a percentage, and I don't think you would gain that much. I'm debatable. If you're losing like 5 armor, it's not really worth it, but it's up to you. He's gone for the autocannon, so cost effective, and he's got the radio 3, also really useful for breakthrough stacking. He's got so much breakthrough here. This is insane. Interweaved road wheels. Ooh, I'm not a big fan of this. I would have taken this off and just gone for a regular suspension. 1, to make it cheaper, and 2, make the reliability go higher. But everything else is on point. Infantry, 30 combat width. One of these hold the front line divisions. I'm not sure why he's got motorized as part of the recon here. I suppose you've got extra motorized just sitting around. I suppose you could do that. I suppose the AA is essential. The engineers are essential because it's a defensive division, and the support artillery is essential. This division is fantastic. I love it. I give this one a 10 out of 10. The only thing I would make differently is maybe add an extra battalion of artillery just for extra firepower. It's cheap, and you need lots of those on the front line. Why not? This division is with mountaineers. Special forces, don't usually see these very often. The org is very low. Don't go for like a 1. Well, he's not got a 1-for-1 ratio, but it's a 3-to-1 ratio, isn't it? Oh, this ratio is really awful. Don't do this. This is just too much artillery on this division. I guess this leans to more and more defensive, but then you would have engineers on as well. This division's really awful. But once again, the only time I felt that mountaineers are really useful are just for holding mountains. In that case, you want to make them super defensive. So add a little bit of artillery onto them, and also add maybe lots of AA onto them, because that's the only reason you break mountains with a lot of air support, by constantly cast bombing them over and over and over again. We have a monstrosity. I don't support this division. I have a big issue with divisions that try to do too much, and this division tries to do everything. It tries to be an anti-tank, tries to be an artillery. It has no AA. It has 37 organization, which is very low for infantry division. I guess it will do decently well when pushing into certain terrain types, because it's a Raj division, so I guess maybe it's going to be fighting in the jungles, maybe, potentially. I don't support this division. At the end of the day, it's best to make a division that has a more niche appeal than a broad appeal. This division tries to attack and defend, fight tanks, and it tries to defend with the engineers. I have nothing against anti-tank, by the way. Anti-tank can be useful, but this one is not very good. Here we go. So we have a division here that's really strange. It's 4 kilometers an hour, but he's decided to add motorized AA on. The only advantage to that is you gain a little bit extra breakthrough, which I suppose is okay, I guess. Is this division attacking or is it defending? It doesn't need logistics because it's only 25 combat width, and it's got 2 lots of artillery on it for extra soft attack. Guys, I don't know what this division's doing. It does a bit of everything. It's okay, I guess. It's not terrible, but then it's not really great either. It's almost like a mash between, I've got all this spare equipment, what division can we make? Voila, this is the division. So we have a division here that once again doesn't know really what it is. So we have light tanks with a little bit of armor. We have a decent amount of breakthrough. I don't know what to say. This is a division that basically, I presume it's more for an attacking division because it doesn't have engineers on, but that's all I can really think of right now. Once again, a division that's just a mad concoction of equipment that I've got in in my logistics. So we've got 2 division tank templates here. We have the breakthrough light tank and a flame tank. So the light tank is a favor towards breakthrough, I'm presuming. It's very cheap. He's gone for super cheap. So we've got skirts, we've got breakthrough, we've got a machine gun, we have 1 radio. It's like a light tank that is cheapest and it's focused towards breakthrough. Do you know what? That's okay. It's okay. It's not bad, but it's okay. I like the fact that he's kept it nice and cheap too. I always think tanks are useful if you can mass produce them. T-34. And then we've got the FLT, which is a flame tank, which once again, he's done as cheap as dirty as possible. That's the way you make flame tanks, really. When you change a regular tank to a flame tank, it loses a massive amount of breakthrough and armor. So stacking lots of breakthrough and armor on a tank that's going to lose most of it is a complete waste of time. No, you can do that if you are unbelievably rich. You've got a billion military factories. The truth is, you have got diminished returns when you are making them uber super expensive. So we have a battleship here, a battle cruiser, sorry. So we have got lots of big turrets for heavy attack. We've got a level 2 here, but level 1's here, extra light attack, and a little bit of spotting as well, and a big radar and a big radio. This ship does a little bit of everything. He's tried to make like a universal battle cruiser that does a little bit of everything. You tend to find the ships, the capital ships, the ones that sit at the back line, they tend to be the most effective when they've got lots of HP. So he's gone quite good on the HP because he's added big armor on it as well. So that I can't quite support it. When you're making this kind of ship, you don't want to make it too expensive because expensive ships take a long time to repair as well. So I would try and take away some of these modules off top to make this ship cheaper, to make it more effective on the back line. I personally think heavy attack's overrated at the minute. So I would take off some of the heavy attack. The only time you want a lot of heavy attack is if you want to pierce a really hard to hit ship. See, look, this has got 32 piercing, but this has got 30 armor. So this could technically pierce itself, really. We have a light cruiser here. This has so much light attack on it. So this is what they call the light attack spam ship. And he's basically gone for the depth charges to support that other ship. It's got some spotting, lots of spotting for subs as well as radar, lots of armor too. So he's gone heavy on the armor, both of the ships too. I tend to find that these ships are better when you spam them out in high numbers and they're like cannon fodder. There's a lot of emphasis for me for making ships not technologically advanced, but making them cost effective. And I think the problem sometimes is that if you make these kind of ships and you make a few of these and then the whole navy gets knocked out because they've taken a lot of hits, not necessarily sunk, but taking a lot of hits, they're going to be in dock repairing for a few months, which is really annoying. The more expensive you make the ship, the longer they're going to be repairing for, which is mad frustrating. It is a Panther. It has a high velocity cannon with 90 piercing. We have breakthrough, we have radio, we have skirts, we have sloped armor. We have, is that entrenchment? It has got entrenchment, a defensive tank. Interesting. I have a feeling that MP people would probably add this on as well. Reliability is 107%. That's a little bit too high, because you could come down to 100%. Any point over 100% gets lost. So that 7% is a waste. But it's not a big deal. At the end of the day, this is still a decent tank. And he's gone for 9 engine and 9 armor. Why has he done that? Because he doesn't have to pay the extra chromium cost. But he has a high velocity gun, which is not really cost effective. High velocity guns, not only are they expensive, but they also have an extra tungsten and chromium cost. I like how he's balanced the cost effectiveness of this tank with also making it very reliable and also quite fast as well. That's pretty good. Marines! You know, the truth is, when you make Marines, you just want to make them like regular infantry, and you just use them for naval invasions. That's pretty much it, really. When it comes down to it, I'd take off the signals. The recon's okay. Logistics, nah, you don't need logistics for this. But I suppose if you're landing on an island, it doesn't have a lot of extra supply, but it's only supply 0.684, 0.84. Yeah, you don't need the logistics here. The AI is essential. Yeah, I'd take off the signals, and I'd take off the logistics, but the rest of it's pretty good. Once again, the only time you're going to use Marines is for island hopping in the Pacific, and this would necessarily do the job. The only way you can make this division better is if you add on some battalions of artillery, add extra soft attack. It needs engineers. Engineers gain 25% extra attack bonus doing amphibious landings. So this would give an extra bonus to amphibious landings on top of the existing one for Marines. That is really big. He's missed that. Oh, what a shame. We have the super anti-submarine destroyer. It's okay. At the end of the day, he's added a bit of torpedo on too, so that gives it a little bit of capital ship fighting capabilities, which can be useful, particularly if you've got a lot of these, but otherwise not so much. I have found that torpedoes are just as useful as light attack. Light attack just take the award for #1 though. The truth is, the best way of taking out submarines is navs. Nav striking absolutely obliterates submarines. One of the issues with destroyers too that have anti-subdue is they haven't got very good range, where submarines have got really good range, so you just operate them outside of enemy ports, like in the middle of the Pacific or the middle of the Atlantic when you've got no ports. So these destroyers can't even reach them anyway, which is always can be an issue. Next up, we have the goofiest combination of equipment here. We have field hospitals, which are poo. Logistics for a 23 combo with is not necessary. I guess I support the EA. The engineers are pretty good for amphibious evasion, so are the Marines. One thing that I think this division argument that can be possible and can be done is that adding extra Marines on does actually give it more amphibious and river attack, which is something people forget about. But once again, is this division attacking? Is it defending? I don't even know. Marines suggest attacking. Engineers suggest defending. I guess this is your cheap Pacific Island hopping division, I suppose. It doesn't need the AT anti-tank, but I guess maybe in some instances you'll land on an island and maybe have to deal with tanks, I suppose. You've got to kind of make the division, in my opinion, to counter specifically what the enemy's doing. And if you know it's a Japanese player that's making tanks to sit on islands to defend them, I suppose that would kind of work. What do we have here? We have a modern tank. Ooh, it's got an absolutely massive cannon, modern turret, extra maintenance, wet ammo storage, radio 3, an auto loader. Do we have 136% reliability? The reliability of this tank is way too high. Once again, anything over 100% is lost. So you need to add on more armor and more engine to get it to 100%. And he's also added on the rocket engine onto this tank, giving it a speed of 10 kilometers per hour. The cost of this is 47. This tank is horrendous. It's awful. It's also cast armor as well. This tank is way too expensive. Way too expensive. There's nothing wrong with making expensive tanks, by the way. If you have the production for it, go for it. But be aware, you need to produce enough to fill out a division to get the maximum effectiveness of that tank in your division, which if you're missing tanks, then obviously you can't do that. So that's actually obviously a problem. So we have a flame tank here that he's added on lots of armor and breakthrough, and the cost of it is 7. So we've gone from 1 armor and 1 breakthrough to 10 armor and 10 breakthrough. We've quadrupled the price. Not worth. Remember, these stats will not directly translate on the division when you add it on. This will be a proportion of the overall division. This is not worth. Nothing wrong with expensive tanks, guys. Really, nothing wrong with it. But Christ, man, you're only going to be able to afford them late game. And you know what the problem with late game is? If you can afford to make an expensive tank this expensive, you've already won anyway. So what's the point? We have a modern tank division, 20 combat with some fantastic soft attack and breakthrough. That's the beauty of modern tanks, though. They've got so good armor and attack. And look how hardness has got. Is that like 85% hardness? That's amazing. Honestly, I don't think you need the logistics or the signals. The recon motorizes, okay, gives breakthrough, which is good. And definitely need AA. AA is essential for this. That's one thing that's missing from this division. The AA attack, the air attack is very, very low. But everything else is really on point. That's really good. We have the Omega Marine Division, and it definitely needs logistics. Motorized to the recons are also good. Engineers is essential due to the amphibious attack. Support and AA. Oh, this is actually a good division. This is a really good one. I could see a Japanese player or an American player with this division, and it would work really effectively. I approve of this. This is really good. Once again, you can only really make 2 of these due to the special forces limit, but this would really work at island hopping. 10 out of 10 would island hop again. What do we have here? We have the mechanized, motorized, medium SPG monster. What is this? 15,000 production cost, 42 combat width. So first of all, the organization is quite low. Now, I understand you might not have the mobile doctrines, so I take that might reach to about 33, 34 org, which is still a little bit on the low end. I would try and go for like 35 to 40 maybe, or even higher if possible, by adding on more infantry. The SPGs are a little bit hardcore in comparison to the fact you've got modern tanks in here as well. This division does a little bit of everything. The only thing it's really missing is the actual air attack. You don't need rockets on this tank. You don't need field hospitals either. Logistics is essential. The AA is essential. And I suppose that's the maintenance is okay too. It is a division that does a lot of everything, but is it really essential? You need the SPGs? At this point, if you're getting high level medium 3s and modern tanks, you don't really need extra soft attack. At that point, it's like, you don't need it. Garrison light tank is the cheapest possible one you can make, which is currently the meta at the moment. Everyone's doing that. And this is the one he's gone with. I found that when you go over 20 combat width for garrisons with MP, you tend to get diminishing returns. So this idea of you have to fill out the full 50 combat width is something that is a little bit overkill. You can if you want to, and you will get refunds on your manpower and your support equipment, but it's more hardcore than it needs to be. But he's min-maxed it, so kudos to him there. Whoa, this is actually pretty good. That's a lot of armor for 1 battalion of medium. Ooh, this is actually pretty sweet. The org is good. The soft attack is good. Has this guy cheated all the doctrines? Because this seems a little bit too good to be true. The only area that probably is a little bit on the weaker end is the breakthrough. But overall, it's got armor. It's got soft attack. Piercing. It's an offensive infantry division, isn't it? It's like a British infantry tank division. I approve of it. I approve. I'll probably make tweaks to the support. But overall, it is still a really good template. We have a little bit of tank destroyer fun with a piercing of 188. There'll be nothing that this can't pierce. Breakthroughs over 1,000, pretty immense, really. Overall, an expensive division, but it does the job. Probably a little bit too hardcore on the tank destroyers, to be honest with you. This is such a late game division that it's so expensive. It's difficult to critique it because it's just got all the best stats and everything. But once again, it's so end game. If you can afford 3 of these, you've already won anyway. So we have a division here that tries to do a little bit of everything. We have tank destroyers, we have SPGs, we have AAs. Once again, this is too hardcore. You don't need to do any of this. The breakthrough's high enough. The armor's high enough. The armor could be a little better, actually. But overall, the breakthrough's high enough. You don't need this SPG here. And I think you can get away with 1 tank destroyer. You don't need to have more than 1. This is actually really funny. This is funny because he's got a machine gun tank here, but he's also added on the adapter for a longer barrel. This is interesting. This is really interesting. It's a monster. He's a monster. It's a speedy little long-barreled machine gun tank. He's so weird. I like it because it's funny. Don't use it, though. Here we go. A division that seems to be a defensive frontline one. Ooh, I think we've got a winner here. So this combination here of 21 combat worth with a bit of artillery, that is a good combination. You can make enough of these and they're cost-effective. He's added on a little bit of armor to get to 11 armor. That's very good, too. Support artillery, always useful. Logistics, not so required. If you can afford the extra support equipment and the motorized, sure, go for it. But overall, it's a bit expensive. Flamers. Nah, he doesn't need flamers, man. Sure, if you can afford it, sure. But the truth is, this is a defensive division to hold the front line. What do you need flamers for? And then the AA is essential. Essential. Overall, I like this. I like this. This is the division you're making big numbers to hold the front line. I like it. You think this video was good? Well, this one is the final form. Click it.